Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you, wherever you may be across this great nation, across this great world, are having fantastic Thursdays. I hope your Halloween hangover is not brutal. I hope it is abated by now. I hope you had enough water to wipe it all out. I want to start off this show by saying, first of all, thanks to my friends at sportsbookreview.com for coming out and sponsoring this show as always, but also for providing you with a location where you can go and make sure that you get the best possible number wherever you go on the internet to make sure your wagers exist. Make sure that you are getting the best possible number. And that's what my friends at sportsbookreview.com can take care of. I want to say this. I think I can make the world a better place with several handy moves. And if you listen to the radio show, you know the arguments that I have made before, but I'm going to keep beating this drum until it starts to have more and more substantial impact. Number one of two things has to happen when it comes to Halloween. Either, number one, Halloween has to become the final Saturday of October every year. So we know that Halloween is always the final Saturday of October. Make that happen. Or make it a holiday the day after Halloween. I think either one of those would be fabulous, highly supported decisions that everyone could embrace. On top of that, I have got two other suggestions that I think would make tremendous sense and make the world a better place. One, and I've been on this for years, stop changing the time zone. Stop changing the time. We should never change from the time that we are on right now. Whatever that is, this time should govern henceforth forever. I think we switch back sometime in November, and I don't want to fall back. I want to stay on this time forever. On top of that, this is another part. This is me trying to make the world better. We should only have two time zones in America. Half of the country should be on the central time zone. The other half of the country should be on the mountain time zone. That way, from New York to LA, there would only be 1 hour difference all day long. And it would mean that old men like me, who would like to stay up for West Coast sporting events, would be able to stay up for West Coast sporting events because we would be hooked up and in good shape with that. That's my get on a pulpit and make an argument. I want three things to happen. Halloween becomes a holiday or moves to Saturday. I want no time change to ever occur. And I want the entire country to be divided evenly between the East and the West Coast time, which would actually be the Central and the Mountain time. Boom. I think American commerce would flourish if all of a sudden you only had 1 hour difference across the entire nation. I don't care about when people would go to bed, all right? You could adjust your schedule so that you went to bed when the sun was not up. And I don't believe that that would happen very often. That is my argument. It would make the world better than it already is, and it would make everybody happier if only people just listened to me all the time. I also would have Super Bowl Sunday always be on while I'm continuing on my American sporting calendar and time calendar in general. I would make Super Bowl Sunday the Sunday before President's Day. A lot of people get President's Day off. I would make Super Bowl Sunday effectively a national holiday. If I were the commissioner of the NFL, I would embrace the holiday weekend, make Super Bowl Sunday President's Day weekend, and I would extend and add another bye week to the NFL season. I don't understand why people are so intense on finishing college football and the NFL so rapidly. Why do you only get one bye week in college football and one bye week in the NFL? Why not add a couple in so that the season stretches a little bit longer so that we can enjoy it for a more longer process? I don't understand. I understand that coaches are concerned about having multiple bye weeks or whatever else. I think it would be phenomenal to set it up Super Bowl Sunday Next day is President's Day. That's a holiday nobody really needs anyway. So you could just embrace it with the NFL. I think it would make everything better. All right. I am telling you right now, okay, off the jump here. Off the jump, a couple of other things that I want to hit here. First of all, go to my guy Ryan Kelly. Get hooked up now with sports, with the best sports connection you can possibly get with thehomeloanexpert.com. Tell them Clay Travis Outkick sent you. If you have credit card debt, they can wipe it all out in one fell swoop. It's November now. You know, I couldn't believe this. We are exactly 3 weeks from Thanksgiving right now. So it's going to be Christmas season by the time you snap your fingers because Thanksgiving is so early this year. It's only 3 weeks until Thanksgiving. So make sure that you get out and get your financial house in order. Wipe out all of your credit card debt in one fell swoop. Let my guy Ryan Kelly take care of you all over the country. Go to thehomeloanexpert.com and you will be well on your way to saving a bundle. All right, there are several things that I want to hit here that I think are important. First of all, I'm going to talk about this Maryland mess. I haven't written or talked that much about the Maryland situation with DJ Durkin because I don't think it lends itself to the modern day social media era where everybody reads all the evidence and then they decide this is the answer. One guy is good, one guy is bad. I would make the argument, and in my new book, Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, which you should buy, I make the argument that the internet has basically devolved to the point where it's one big blame meter, where something bad happens and then everybody else sits around out there and tries to figure out who is to blame for whatever happened, even if what happened is, as I think it is the case with Jordan McNair, the player at Maryland who died, a completely tragic accident. I don't believe that there was any nefarious intent. There may have been negligence, but negligence that did not rise to the level of manslaughter. There was no criminal intent. Sometimes bad things happen. And before I get into the Jordan McNair story, I want to talk about this for a second. If you have ever played sports, you have probably been in a conditioning drill where at some point in time you have thought to yourself, man, I can't do anymore, right? A good coach, and certainly a good strength coach, will push you to the edge of where you think your endurance lies and then take you beyond it. It's part of being mentally tough. It's part of being physically tough. When you are young and there are power dynamics involved, sometimes you don't know when you have had enough. I think about that for this reason. How do we know when what otherwise may be good for most people suddenly turns deadly for others? And I don't claim to know the answer. And I don't think there is an easy answer, notwithstanding what everybody else says. I also believe this. When something bad happens and the media comes in and descends and decides to make a decision about what happened, oftentimes the media comes with a pre-existing narrative. And when they look for evidence that something bad is going to happen by pouring through emails or by pouring through statements, inevitably you can find something bad that has happened. To me, the DJ Durkin case, and to a certain extent the Urban Meyer case, raise intriguing questions that don't have easy answers. And those questions are these. Who is to blame when someone may not necessarily be to blame for a tragedy that happens? I don't know the answer. I do know that I've read a lot of what happened at Maryland, and I can certainly understand how the Maryland Board of Regents could have investigated this case and said, we don't find cause to fire DJ Durkin. I don't believe they made that decision because DJ Durkin is a great football coach. I think they made that decision because they did not believe there was evidence that they needed to fire him. And so I don't think the Maryland Board of Regents behaved in an improper manner. I know that the internet loves and lives to define everything as either good or bad with virtually no middle ground or nuance. I think this is not a black or white issue. I think this issue is steeped almost 100% in gray. It is a difficult story to analyze. One of the things you learn in law school, which is incredibly complicated, is how do we draw the line when it comes to who is responsible for a negative act that occurs? And there oftentimes are very wavering lines that we draw when it comes to culpability for both a criminal and a civil context. And I think this is an example of that. And what I would encourage you guys to do, and I say this all the time, it's funny that I get called a hot take artist, because if I have a strong opinion, it's because I've examined all the evidence and I feel strongly about this case. I don't have a strong opinion in the DJ Durkin case. I don't think it lends itself to strong opinions. While I think it's easy to get on the internet and posture and say, oh my God, this is unacceptable, there's no way this should be allowed, I think when you actually examine all of the evidence, this is not a case necessarily where the head coach is culpable. I think the question that has to be asked here is, to what degree do we draw the line and expect that people in positions of power are going to be responsible, even if they are not directly culpable, for bad acts that occur? And again, this comes back to the internet's desire to create a blame factory. When something bad happens, and it can be something that's not that serious, or it can be something that's incredibly serious, social media goes to work to assign blame. When you really break down what happens on social media, any major event happens. Think about this for a minute. Any major event happens, almost immediately social media is trying to diagnose the cause of that while often overlooking the direct cause. Let me give you an example. We just had an awful incident happen in Pittsburgh where a guy with a gun walked into a synagogue and shot up the synagogue. This is the latest in a long string of mass shootings that have been perpetrated by crazy people in this country. My only response when we have one of these mass shootings, whether it's happening at a high school, whether it's happening at a synagogue, whether it's happening at a church, is to say that in my opinion, the only thing that people like me who have audiences can do to make this a better place and make these things less likely to happen is not aggressively cover and make famous the crazy shooters. Because I think the reason why we have continued to have all of these mass shootings that take place is because all these crazy men are copycatting each other, and they envy the adulation that they see in their warped and crazy mind from all the media attention, all the pictures on television, all the front page newspaper articles, all of the internet traffic that follows them if they are the perpetrator. And in fact, there is studies and evidence to support that this is in fact the best thing that the media could do, is to adopt a don't name the shooter policy and don't allow him to become famous because of his infamous act. But what do we see happen? What do we almost immediately see happen? Same thing with this guy, this nutcase who is mailing these bombs. Almost immediately the media makes them famous, and then the media decides that somebody needs to be blamed, and that person right now is Donald Trump. Donald Trump, I don't believe, has made it any more likely that people are going to go crazy and walk in and start shooting people. There were a lot of mass shootings during Barack Obama's term. I don't think Barack Obama is responsible for those either. There are a lot of mass shootings during George W. Bush's term. I don't think that George W. Bush was responsible, nor do I think Bill Clinton was responsible. I think that the person to blame is the crazy person. How do I tie that in with Maryland? I think sometimes really bad things happen without the intent of really bad things happening. And I think that's a great example of what happened at Maryland. I don't think DJ Durkin is an awful person. I don't think it's very likely that he was doing anything different at Maryland than what he had done at Michigan, than what he had done at Notre Dame, than what he had done at Florida. I think he was behaving in a manner, and his strength coach was behaving in a manner that was what he believed was the most efficacious to make his football team better. Could he have been wrong? Certainly. Would I want my son to go play for somebody who necessarily had the same culture that he had created? Not really. I've said this before. If I had to pick any place in America for my kid to go to school and any coach for my son to play for, I'd want him to go to Stanford to play for David Shaw. I think it's the best football and culture mix in the entire country. I think Stanford does it right. I think of any place in the country that I could send my kid, I'd want him to go to Stanford. And I'd want him to play for somebody like David Shaw. But I think this idea that we have created where there has to be an immediate scapegoat when something bad happens is, frankly, a bad sign for what we have created in the modern social media era. So keep that in mind. And I guess what I'm saying is here, in a hot take era where everybody seems convinced that they know exactly what should happen at Maryland, I don't think it's an easy call. I don't think there was an easy decision to make. I don't think that DJ Durkin is awful, and I don't think he's a saint. I think he is, like most of us, somewhere in that gray area, and I think an unbelievable and unfortunate tragedy happened at Maryland. Here's what I would say should come out of this. All Power 5 conferences should adopt a standard practice for off-season workouts, much like happened in the NFL when Corey Stringer died. I think that if you're going to have an on-campus workout, to me, the NCAA, which doesn't ever do anything, should get involved and have a set procedure that a set number of assistant athletic trainers or medical specialists have to be present when you are on a campus facility conducting a campus workout when it's in the off season. I think you need all of the requisite people there. The schools, especially in Power 5 conferences, all make so much money that I think that is a no-brainer. Now, some schools don't have the money to be able to afford it. Certainly, some high schools don't have the ability to afford it. But when you are on campus conducting a workout, I think the medical personnel needs to be there sufficient to handle any kind of medical emergency that arises. And I'm surprised and often disappointed when we spend most of our time trying to find a villain in a case like these and very little of the time trying to say, how can we ensure that something like this doesn't happen again? So my solution to the Maryland issue would not be to make DJ Durkin try to be like the worst human being on the face of the planet or try to point to Maryland and say, look at what they're doing, it's unacceptable. It would be to ensure that off-season workouts are all staffed in the same way under NCAA rules, that if you're going to have football players, I think certainly basketball players too, but football players in particular, conducting off-season workouts, you need to have medical personnel there prepared to handle them. Why football players uniquely? Because their bodies are big. Because when it's a hot day and you weigh 320 pounds, your body gets overheated and responds differently than mine does when I weigh 180 pounds, or the average quarterback does, or the average defensive back does, or the average other field position other than, frankly, offensive and defensive linemen. I just think it's a really tough story. All right, speaking of another story, and this is a challenge, I think. We got two big games going on in the SEC this weekend. Kentucky is hosting Georgia, and LSU is hosting Alabama. This is something I think that is really interesting. This is something that is not getting a lot of attention, that I think if you're a fan of sports media or business, you should be paying a lot of attention to. The SEC's relationship with CBS is broken. CBS, these data points are unbelievable to me. CBS pays just $55 million a year to carry all the CBS games plus the SEC title game. ESPN pays twice that to carry one Monday Night Football game a year. CBS had the opportunity when Texas A&M and Missouri were added to the conference to make a decision to go out and commit long-term to the SEC at a substantial increase in value. To ESPN's credit, that's when the SEC network became a reality, and that's when they made the decision to invest long-term in the SEC, which is why the SEC and ESPN are in bed together until 2034, because they have made long-term commitments to each other from a business perspective. The SEC offered that same opportunity to CBS, and in what I think will be seen as one of the dumbest decisions in the history of sports media, despite the fact that they were making money hand over fist on the SEC game of the week, they chose not to do it. And as a result, the SEC's contract comes up in 2023. That'll be the last season of the SEC on CBS. And I have been told under no uncertain terms that the SEC has no intention of re-upping with the CBS. So what is going to happen with that rights package? It's an incredible value right now. ESPN, Fox, NBC, Turner, maybe Amazon, maybe Apple, maybe Google, maybe Facebook. Who knows exactly who is going to be on that television platform and how how the SEC is going to distribute their games. But if you like sports media and business, this is a story that is worth paying a lot of attention to. I think if you do the math and you look around at all of the different availabilities right now, the SEC's television package is the single best deal in all of sports. And the interest level in SEC fans in watching the game of the week is so massive that I think this package is worth around $250 million a year, depending on how many different bidders there are and how much money somebody wants to spend. Remember, the Rose Bowl by itself, along with the Sugar Bowl, sold for $80 million standing alone. If you had to choose, I'm curious in the comments for both Facebook and Periscope, if you had to choose right now and you were an executive, would you rather have the SEC title game or the Sugar Bowl? Which would you rather air on your television network, the SEC title game or the Sugar Bowl? I think that is an easy call. For me, and I bet just about every single person who is in the comments, the answer is the SEC title game because it's almost a default playoff game. Well, I want you to think about the math on this for a minute. The SEC title game, which is included in the SEC's overall television package with CBS, that entire CBS package, think about how crazy this is, sells for $25 million less than the Sugar Bowl does by itself. I want to repeat that because a lot of people are blown away by how much of a valuation the SEC is and how much of a steal CBS is getting right now. The Rose Bowl by itself and the Sugar Bowl by itself, each of those games is $80 million a year. You right now, with the CBS deal, they are buying the entire first-round draft pick every week, as well as the SEC title game, 15 games total, for $25 million less than what the Sugar Bowl or the Rose Bowl cost by themselves. And that's not the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl when they are hosting playoff games. That's the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl when they are not hosting playoff games. Right now, ESPN is paying for every one of the playoff games, roughly, there are 3 games, and they're paying over $600 million for them. ESPN is paying roughly $200 million a year per playoff game. 2 semifinals and the title game, $600 million total. Think about how wild that valuation is for 3 games. The SEC the SEC game of the week, $55 million. If I were a CBS executive, and you know who's watching? I bet some CBS executives are going to end up watching. I would this week, with both of those games going on, Georgia at Kentucky and Alabama at LSU, I would get on the phone with the SEC and I would try and extend my deal right now because they are close to getting left at the altar and they're going to be left with nothing because they have been so stubborn and so pig-headed that they haven't been willing to recognize that they got a tremendous deal, and that's why they need to be smart and try to make a Hail Mary attempt to keep the CBS SEC game of the week. Because otherwise there's going to be a lot of suitors. Fox is going to be at the altar, NBC, Turner, ESPN, maybe this DAZN that gave all the money to the boxer here recently. I think there are a lot of different moves. Yes, $55 million for everything. To put that into perspective, these 2 games that are airing on CBS on Saturday, which will probably be at least 8 hours of games, not counting the studio programming, 8 hours of football will cost $7 million for CBS. They are going to have the best return of investment on Saturday of the year in all of sports. They will pay $7 million on Saturday and get 2 top 10 telecasts that will air from 3:30 till 11:30 at night. 8 hours of programming, not counting the studio show programming attached to it. It's unbelievable. Now, some people said, how did that happen? It's a good question. Back in the day, first of all, the rights fees had not exploded yet. Secondly, Mike Slive wanted to get on CBS because he saw it as primarily a branding opportunity. He wanted every SEC game of the week to be on CBS, which at the time and for a lot of that period has been the nation's most watched sports network, and he wanted it to be an advertisement. So I think there are a lot of different potential directions that this SEC on CBS package can go. but I think it is undoubtedly one of the most valuable packages out there, and it will go a long way towards determining how the different balance of power will go between Fox, CBS, NBC, ESPN, and everybody else. All right. And by the way, I think it's possible the SEC could go with an over-the-air streaming partner by the time we get to 2023. I think there are a lot of you out there right now that would pay $100 a year to get the SEC game of the week and have zero commercials during it. I know I get frustrated to the high heavens with how many commercials CBS packs into the SEC game of the week. Imagine how much more fun it would be to watch an SEC game of the week if it was like Netflix and there were no commercials at all. I would pay $100 a year just to not have to sit through another 14 hours of commercials during the course of the game. I think it's an intriguing question that deserves to be examined. I'm excited to see how it's going to all play out. So, I mean that they have commercials every time the ball goes out of bounds. CBS packs those games with an insane amount of all the packages. Well, you're not going to pay $100 a year for all the SEC games because the ESPN has the rights to every other SEC football game outside of CBS all the way through 2034. So I don't think that's likely to happen. Okay. Here are my gambling picks. And by the way, I'm going to be on Lock It In at 3:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific, and you will be well on your way. All right, here's my pick for Thursday Night Football. Tonight, I am on Central Florida. The most recent line I have seen is 10.5 in their game against Temple. That's the game. I hope, by the way, you hopped on the Ball State game last night. I took Toledo against Ball State. We already got one winner this week. I am on Central Florida tonight in the game against Temple. Central Florida minus 10.5, I believe. Yes, the Fade Whitlock special hit last night. Fade Whitlock on Ball State. I'm playing the money line here, but I would tell you not necessarily to play the money line. I think the Raiders are going to beat the 49ers. I think the Raiders are going to beat the 49ers tonight on Thursday Night Football in the Sadness Bowl of the Bay Area. There is not a lot of excitement to see how the Raiders and the 49ers are going to do. There was so much more excitement for this game before the season started. I am going to take the Raiders to win outright. I just don't believe the 49ers, given their quarterback situation. We don't know whether or not, what's his name? The quarterback for the 49ers from whose family lives down the street from me, Beathard. Whether or not C.J. Beathard is healthy enough to play, and so we don't know whether or not C.J. Beathard is going to play. At least I don't know unless that news has come out recently. I don't have a lot of faith if he's not playing and who exactly is going to be on. So here we go. Here we go with my picks. Again, these are college football picks in addition to the fact that I'm on the Raiders tonight to win against the 49ers. Syracuse and Wake Forest. I gave this out to you at Syracuse -4. It's up to almost Syracuse 7 now, and I love the over. Syracuse and the over against Wake Forest. Georgia at Kentucky. I'm on the Bulldogs. You guys know I'm on the Bulldogs. Kentucky fans have been in an uproar over the fact that I say their team's overrated and they're going to get whipped this weekend. Here's the deal. I do 15 hours of radio a week. I do 5 hours of live television a week. I do another 3 or 4 hours of other media. Kentucky fans are like, why do you talk about us so much? I have talked about Kentucky. I went and looked for 10 minutes this week. They have been so obsessed with my 10 minutes of opinions about Kentucky. Here's the truth. Georgia's going to beat your Wildcat ass. Memphis against East Carolina. I am on Memphis. Oklahoma at Texas Tech. I'm on the over. Notre Dame at Northwestern. This line keeps ticking up, and I don't see it. Northwestern has been competitive against everybody they have played all season long. And Notre Dame has played a lot of close games against inferior opponents. I don't understand why this line keeps going up. It might get to 10. I bet it at 8.5. It's at 9.5 right now. So I'm on Northwestern, and I think Northwestern might win this game outright. A&M at Auburn, I'm on the under. In the A&M Auburn game, I'm not sold on either offense, particularly A&M's offense, which to me seems to be regressing. Charlotte at Tennessee, I took Charlotte plus 21. I don't think Tennessee should be favored by 21 over anybody. in FBS right now, hardly. Louisville at Clemson. It's going to be a bloodbath for Louisville. I'm taking the over, though. I feel the most confident about that. South Carolina, Ole Miss, I'm on the over. Bama at LSU, I gave this out at 13.5. It's now out to Bama 15. I just don't think that LSU can score enough to keep up with Alabama. I think Alabama is going to roll. I think the Tide is going to win big. All right, that's 12-0. 12-0 the picks. One more time for you as we finish off the show. Bama at LSU. South Carolina, Ole Miss, the over. Louisville, Clemson, the over. Charlotte, plus 21 against Tennessee. A&M, Auburn, the under. I've got Northwestern, plus almost 10 now. It keeps going up against Notre Dame. Oklahoma, Texas Tech, the over. Memphis, minus 12.5 or 13 against ECU. Georgia, minus 9.5 against Kentucky. And the blood bank, by the way, is the over in the Syracuse-Wake Forest game. It's a big one, but it's sitting right now at 75. And finally, tonight's picks, I'm on the Raiders, plus 2.5 they are right now. I think the Raiders win outright. And I am on Central Florida, minus 10.5. I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. Lock it in. It'll be live at 4:30 Eastern. We're growing rapidly on the show. Somebody just said, how are the ratings? I don't look at them daily, but we're up 70% on viewership since we started like 8 weeks ago. So a lot of people have rolled in and are starting to enjoy the show. I hope all of you will as well. Kisses to everyone. My name is Clay Travis, DBAP, but sometimes it's important as well to SBAP. This has been Outkick the Show.